Welcome into Fantasy Football Forge. My name's Steve, and it's time for the 2025 and 6 NFL season, fantasy football season, to get going. This is my first video of the season. I am readjusting, making myself a little bit more centered there. First video of the season. Going to start off with an easier one here with the quarterback position tiers. More important than rankings here. I might not have them exactly in the order that I would rank them. I'm going to do my best to put them in order of ranking as well as tiers, but there are going to be some little groups of players that I can't say for sure which one's ahead of which one at this point in time. What I have done so far this offseason is I have done my projections. My projections do not include touchdowns. They're mostly based on last year's performances. The only thing that has changed is, of course, sometimes players' teams, who they're playing for, has changed for some of these players, and their offensive coordinators, head coaches might change, which might change the philosophy of the expectation of the pass to run ratios, which can then, of course, impact what we can expect from these performances. Those are really the only things that I have changing here. I do not project touchdowns, so that is something to keep in mind when I make my rankings compared to what my projections did with players. But what you're seeing on the screen right now is a combination of how these players performed last year, fantasy-wise, as well as what my projections came up with based on their performances last year, but still with some changes. Like I said, no touchdowns included in that information, and those touchdowns are important. They're quite a few points, less so maybe than for the quarterback position than some other positions, but obviously they're still very important. Go from a 12-point day to a 16-point day in fantasy football with one touchdown in most scoring formats. So what we're going to do today is figure out my tiers. I don't have a preset. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I have not done this exercise yet. I did do a quick prep where I kind of did this about 50% of the way, so I have an idea of where I'm going to go. I don't know where I'm going to end up. Let's just get going, and I do want to start at the bottom here, and I got to make sure that I keep this screen so I know what you're seeing. So we have our non-starters currently now. Another thing to keep in mind is I have been paying attention to the offseason, to the NFL as a whole, of course. I always do. I have no clue what the fantasy football rankings are as of this point, with the ECR, all that kind of stuff. Zero clue. I have not listened, watched anything to do with fantasy football at this point in the off season. I will get to doing some of that to help round out my opinions, and also to make sure that I don't miss anything along the newswire. For instance, I just realized this morning, Anthony Richardson, who I did project to possibly win, he's the one I projected, but not strongly, but he is the one who I did project as the winning starter there in Indianapolis over Daniel Jones. However, at this point in the offseason, he is not he's not playing because he has a bum sore shoulder, and given his injury history, given what his strengths are as a quarterback, that's not something to ignore. That's pretty big. So Daniel Jones, Anthony Richardson, that gap has closed since just doing these projections a day ago, because I just did these yesterday. I finished them yesterday, and then I saw that, I think, this morning. Maybe it was something that came out yesterday, but it probably was. But that's one big question mark, and that's going to move Daniel Jones up from the non-starter category into this kind of question mark territory instead. Because ultimately, is Daniel Jones somebody that we're in most leagues going out and drafting, going to get excited about drafting? No, not really, even if he does win that starting job. In terms of the players, the other fantasy players, I'm hoping Daniel Jones wins for the sakes of the Josh Downses of the world. I do think that he's probably going to be better for their fantasy value, so that is another reason why we are interested in who wins this in terms of the value for those Indianapolis players. So the sooner we get some sort of clear answer there, that'll be tough. You cannot predict which route they're going to go. There are very valid arguments that I'm sure they're going through as a staff of, do you start the season off starting Anthony Richardson? Do you start it off starting Daniel Jones? I don't think, as long as injury isn't a reason for choosing which one wins the camp battle. I kind of doubt one of them truly pulls away. They're going to just give you different benefits to them. Daniel Jones will be, less big plays, more consistently accurate, more consistent in moving the ball. Anthony Richardson will give you those bigger plays, but obviously will be less consistent. Both of them bring you rushing upside, a little bit different in terms of how much rushing upside, how valuable that is from the two of them, how that operates within how you would call any kind of quarterback rushing plays. But ultimately, still, they do both offer you some of that scrambling upside as well. So, some similarities in terms of which one the coaching staff is deciding to go with. You could go any route. The other thing, too, to think of is the Anthony Richardson factor. Do you want to put him out there day one, see if he works, sinks or swims, and then you replace him with Daniel Jones? Or do you start off with Daniel Jones, you let Anthony Richardson sit, learn a little bit more before you end up giving him that test run? I think ultimately there's about a 90-95% chance that we will see both of them on the field at some point this season for one reason or another. So that's where I lie there. And I think we're going to get some more big question marks. For now, I'm just going to work my way up, and I'm going to move players up and down. I added a few different blanks right now because I know I'm going to need more tiers in this. I might spread them out, and then I might actually reduce the amount of tiers again, depending on, once again, how I'm feeling at the time. So I do know, look at this F tier of players. I have Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, Matt Stafford, Michael Penix Jr., Bryce Young, Joe Flacco, CJ Stroud, all in here. What I will say, something that I kind of notice across the board here, for the most part, going to be offenses that are more wanting to run heavily. So that's pretty strictly true across the way. I would say less of a sure thing in Dallas, but also Dak Prescott's going to be starting the season as a question mark. Is it a big question mark? Not really. We kind of know he's going to be missing. I don't know. At this point, it sounds like maybe up to like the first 4 games. And then, of course, he loses a little bit more of what mobility at one point he brought. So he definitely belongs in this tier of quarterback at this age and with the injuries that he's had in his career. In terms of big question mark, I still think there's enough upside that I'm going to not put him into that tier just based on what we currently have in that tier. So I'm not going to do that. Matt Stafford, Michael Penix Jr., Bryce Young, I don't know if this offense wants to be more pass happy, but I don't know that they can be, and there's just obviously questions with Bryce Young. I'm not going to go with one big question. We did see some positive regression, him improving last year, so that's good. Do I really want to trust it fantasy-wise? No, probably not even really too interested in taking him as a backup quarterback in most formats. Of course, not all formats, so that's why we're going to rank all of these guys ultimately. For Joe Flacco, he is going to start the season as Cleveland's quarterback, probably very high chance that's the case. Right? We have a third round and a 5th round quarterback. Is that right between those two? And I liked Dillon Gabriel a lot. That's about what I had on him grade-wise. 2nd to 3rd round grade I think I actually had on him. Or I had like a 3rd round flat. And Shedeur, of course, I did like kind of more. I get why he fell in the draft. I don't necessarily disagree with it. And I think between the two, I do think either one of them could win that next job. So that doesn't really matter. But there is, I think, a big question mark just because he's not going to be the starter all season long. So maybe there's not necessarily a question mark, but I do think that he belongs in this tier. So for now, I do want to try to keep them in order of if I move somebody down a tier, they're going to be at the top. And then we'll come back and we'll reorganize within the tiers as well. So for now, Daniel Jones came from down here. Anthony Richardson was actually much, much higher. So we'll keep them in that kind of order. I think the one player here that I have like the most faith in, the upside with, is going to be Matt Stafford. I'm going to put him at the top of this tier for now. Could move him up a tier, could move multiple. We'll see as we kind of develop this tier. I also think, actually, CJ Stroud, I am just going to move up a tier completely. So that's going to bring us up here to tier D. And I have a couple of names that stand out. So we have Bo Nix, Tua, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, Drake May, Russell Wilson, Tyler Shuck. There's going to be a name that stands out. Cam Ward, Geno Smith, Trevor Lawrence, Caleb Williams. So Tyler Shuck, off the bat, we are just going to bring down to, I would say, I don't think he belongs in the same tier as these guys, because I don't mind taking chances on rookies. In general, a rookie's getting a starting opportunity. I do want to recognize the potential there. But the weaponry that he has is limited. We're going to have Rashid Shaheed coming off of injury, right? We have, of course, the injury-ridden, but also talented Chris Olave. Don't have much behind them. They did bring in, is it Brandon Cooks off the top of my head? They did bring in an aging veteran who's coming off of a worse year. As I'm describing Brandon Cooks because that's who I think it is. I still some players I still have to recalibrate to where they are. Even amongst these quarterbacks, sometimes it'll take me a moment to remember where they're quarterbacking now. But for Shook, there's definite upside. I don't know how much I want to bet on it, and I don't know how much upside there is because of the situation in New Orleans. Offensively, just isn't one that entices me too much. You have an aging Alvin Kamara, it's not that bad. I think, we'll just put him right now. I think he might be the leader in the clubhouse of this group, at least, because there is such, he could be as good as Bo Nix was last year. In that case, he would outperform where I currently have him ranked. The other names up here in Tier D that stand out to me are going to be Justin Herbert. I'm just going to move him up a tier. I think they now have enough receiving weapons that I like personally. The run game, it should be good and everything, but I think that there's going to be enough passing and enough downfield passing and everything that I think we're at least at a point of fine. We're beyond the run first offenses in a sense here with Justin Herbert. Could definitely be wrong. There is a reason where we could make one big tier at the end of the day, which is definitely would go down to at least Matt Stafford here, who I kind of am tempted to put into the same tier there as, I'm going to put him in the same tier as CJ Stroud for now. And I think he was actually ahead of Stroud. Oh, well. But we'll see on that one. We're going to move Justin Herbert up, and I think we're going to move Trevor Lawrence up. So Trevor Lawrence now has, Brian Thomas Jr. and the first pick of the draft, the first non-quarterback pick of the NFL draft as his other wide receiver there. I like those options more. Also, not really a good defense, so in terms of having to pass a lot, think of Joe Burrow last year, had to pass a lot because not a good defense that you're going to have to keep up with offenses with, as well as the fact that not a great running game as far as the eye can see based on last year's performances, based on what they've done this offseason, shouldn't be much improved. So all those factors should mean a lot of passing from Trevor Lawrence. So a lot of upside there. I think maybe more than Justin Herbert when we come back to grouping these after we get them grouped into tiers. So otherwise, Bo Nix, Tua, Jordan, Drake May, Russell, I'm not sure. Cam Ward, once again, I do like to lean into the rookie. Not the best receiving group, though. Not very deep. So that is a concern. They're just not expecting that offense to be too good this year. I would say worse than what the Broncos was last year, So that's kind of maybe my ceiling is something of what Bo Nix did last year, which is pretty middling, which is okay. But I don't want to get as high up maybe as I have with some other rookies in past years. Doesn't offer the most rushing upside or anything like that either to get more excited about. Geno Smith, this is going to be a run-heavy offense. He's in Las Vegas, right? If I got that wrong, my freaking bad. But for now, we'll put him ahead to try to just keep in line with that. But I think I might even want Geno Smith down into this group is a potential. Questionable there. I do like the receiving group that they have created there in Las Vegas. Might take a little bit of time for that to come together with the rookie wide receiver and everything. So he's somebody who could get better as the year goes along. He definitely has a running back who can make things happen after he catches the ball, as well as a tight end who can make things happen after they catch the ball. So there is some upside there that I enjoy, just as I think there's upside in all of these situations. So yeah, this is like an upside, like, I don't know, run heavy with upside kind of tier, maybe we could call it. Also, in terms of run heavy, the Houston Texans should have a focus on the rushing attack. They brought in their new offensive coordinator comes over from the Los Angeles Rams, and you might say, well, that's going to be more pass heavy, Shanahan style of offense, wide zone scheme, but that's not the case. The Rams have last year, I believe they ran gap running the most, and part of the reason was that they brought in, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but they brought in, who is now the offensive coordinator of Houston, from the New England scheme, which, some years ago was like the most gap run heavy scheme. So there should be a focus on getting to a gap running scheme in Houston this year, and I think a focus on just running the ball more effectively in this offense. Also, though, I do like what they did, revamping that wide receiver room quite a bit. So I do think CJ Stroud's in line for a better year as well. On top of that, he was down pretty low. I think he might have been last originally. Russell Wilson playing for the New York Jets. Does not have a good receiving core. He's with the Giants. That's somebody else with the Jets. Russell Wilson with the Giants. Quite a bit to like there. I don't know if I like the upside more than these guys, but I am thinking I'm going to keep him within the grouping here for like Matt Stafford. And then you got like Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, not Michael Penix, not too far behind. Bryce Young's the only one out of this. So this is one where maybe this tier disappears and I end up moving Bryce Young down and these three up, or something like that is possible. Otherwise, with this tier, all these names, Caleb, Cam, Drake, Jordan, Love, Tua, Bo Nix, I think I'm going to keep them all together for now. Yeah, I'm going to come back to this, though. I think there's some reworking that needs to be done here as we get into this a little bit more granularly. That will shake some of this up. Moving up to tier B, Sam Darnold, definitely out of place here. I think he goes down to the Geno Smith tier, at least. Maybe not at least. He's in Seattle. That offense probably takes a step back from where Geno Smith was last year. For now, I'm going to move Sam here. It's tough. It's tough. I'm going to probably have to make these tiers just a little bit bigger, ultimately. Justin Fields, I think we can at least move him down a tier here for now. Brock Purdy, I am going to probably keep up in this tier. Jared Goff, I think we can move down a tier. Was he behind Justin Fields? I guess so. Kyler Murray, I think we're going to move down. J.J. McCarthy, we're definitely going to move down. Probably 2 tiers here. Technically, he'll be up front there. And then Patrick Mahomes, I think we'll keep right here. Which brings us to the top S tier here. Whatever. Lamar Jackson, Jaden Daniels, definitely tough to argue against that. Joe Burrow, do we think the Cincinnati's defense gets better? I would say probably. I do tend to think that it probably gets better, which should mean that he has to pass less. It's close. I don't know. It's close, but he just doesn't have that rushing upside that a Lamar Jackson, a Jaden Daniels, even a Josh Allen does. Josh Allen gets, a lot of rushing touchdowns in close. Jalen Hurts rushes quite a bit, but he doesn't rush for like a lot of yards. So I'm going to move down with Joe Burrow, and then Baker Mayfield. It feels out of place, it might not be as out of place as we think. He had coming off of a really good year. Now he's got a new offensive coordinator, so that is going to change things. But I think now, right here we're going to have some changes from Justin Fields on down to Bryce Young here. More changes there. But I like what we've got going here. I just want to maybe reorder these tiers. So for my S tier, Lamar Jackson, I am going to have him as my number 1 quarterback going into the year. And I think I just feel a little bit better about the resume of Josh Allen than I do for Jayden Daniels. Higher upside Jayden Daniels, though. I will admit that much over Josh Allen at this point in their careers, given the offenses that they have, and given... I think both of these defenses have... I think the Buffalo Bills defense is probably more talented than Washington's defense right now. Washington's defense might be better coached, though. But yeah, similar enough situations there defensively that I don't think either one of them, gets into situations where like Joe Burrow does, where he's got to try to win the game. And so not too far behind is going to be Joe Burrow and Jalen Hurts, and I think I'm going to keep them in that order. And then we have the Brock Purdy, Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield tier. So San Francisco's defense is retooling. Also, Brock Purdy's offense is a little bit banged up, especially to start the year. And, like Ayuk probably won't be himself even by the end of the year. So there is a little bit of that. I love Ricky Pearsall's potential this year. I'm assuming he's going to be a good value in drafts, but maybe everybody's on top of that. I am thinking that this Kansas City offense returns back to a point of being fairly dangerous, fairly pass-heavy. I think they're going to have a return back to that. So I'm going to put Patrick Mahomes at the front of this group, I believe, over Baker Mayfield. I am going to still maybe keep him out of this tier. It's close. Closer than I think the Baker and Brock argument here. Brock's been, by the way, I do not think that this is too high for Brock, just in general, based on what he's done in his career. He's been very solid as a back-end number 1 fantasy quarterback his entire career. Do I like Brock Purdy or Baker Mayfield more? Baker did come in, higher projection, did come in off of a better fantasy season last year. Brock Purdy's offense doesn't really improve. There is the Chris Godwin injury that could hamper this offense a little bit, but hey, they picked up Emeka Egbuka. Do have an aging and coming off of injury Chris Godwin, an aging Mike Evans. Offensive coordinator change. That's tough. I don't know. I do not know which one I'm going to end up having higher at the end of the day, or if somebody else will come up and be higher than either one of these guys. But I think that's going to be the top 3 tiers. Let's move on to this tier, and I'm going to probably cut ahead a little bit after I think about what I'm doing here. I don't have to think much. I mean, Justin Fields will be playing for the New York Jets, so I think a lot will be asked of him. I just don't know how much he steps up to meet that kind of demand. So he's definitely probably going to be moving down a tier. I'm going to move him back here, at least for now. This tier, Jared Goff, I don't think has the same kind of upside as Kyler Murray, although I do like him quite a bit, just doesn't have that rushing upside. Justin Herbert, I think, has more upside than Jared Goff by a little ways. Defense, I think, also worse, probably, than Detroit's defense. Demands a little bit more. Close, better coached, maybe. I don't know, that's tough to say at this point in time. And Trevor Lawrence definitely has like the bad defensive upside that I would say both Kyler. Okay, so what I'm feeling here is that Jared Goff, Justin Fields are out-tiered by Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert. I don't even know how comfortable I feel with Kyler Murray, but I think we need to at least make that update here. With this next tier, I'm going to go Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert. In what order do I put them in? At this point in the offseason, I'm going to do this. High optimism for what Trevor Lawrence could be, ceiling-wise. I trust the floor a little bit more here for Kyler Murray because of his rushing upside. But also a little bit more inconsistent probably than like a Justin Herbert. But Justin Herbert coming off of a really poor season. A lot of reason to think he will rebound to some extent. Just how much? Anywhere within this tier for sure. And, I would argue, obviously, you could jump up a tier. So I think we're going to keep that tier where that tier's at. Now it's on to this tier. And so Denver's got a really good defense. Bo Nix, shouldn't be asked to have to do as much as some of them. J.J. McCarthy, I think I got to move behind Bo Nix. Justin Fields, Bo Nix, that's tough. I like the offensive situation for Bo Nix better, and I think Bo Nix has a little bit more rushing upside. Jared Goff, new offensive coordinator, could see a little bit of a step back. Already a very average, in a good way, starting quarterback, but I do think rushing upside not there, some changes, do have to keep that realistic. And then I don't think I want to move any of these guys up ahead of Bo Nix or Justin Fields. And the question now starts to become, is that like its own little tier of like risky upside? And I might argue that it is. For now, that's what I'm going to do. So once again, Bo Nix, limited upside for several reasons. But I do think that offense probably does do better than last year, but not the most gets asked of them. So if we're thinking within this idea of like rushing upside and risky type of options, do you lean into that risk or do you lean into the consistency of Bo Nix over Justin Fields? I think I just want the better quarterback, which I think already last season was Bo Nix. But fantasy, they both do get rushing yards. So Justin Fields would be a little bit more up and down. Bo Nix would be a little bit more consistent between the two of them. That's a weird tier. That is a weird tier. That feel free to rip me in the comments. I think I'm going to keep that like that, though. Next tier, Jared Goff. More than J.J. McCarthy, yes. Tua. More than J.J. McCarthy. That's tough after last year. I think so. I think that's really close. Ultimately, the reason I'm going to do it for now is that I think that Miami's defense is worse, so I think that the game in, game out demand ask of Tua Tagovailoa could be greater in terms of passing the ball. Neither one of them with rushing upside, neither Jordan Love. Drake May does carry some rushing upside, so I know Drake May over J.J. McCarthy. I think Jordan Love over J.J. McCarthy. Drake May, Jordan Love, Tua, that's all tough. I think maybe we move this back. I think Jordan Love probably has the better receiving core, more experienced. Defensively, I don't know which one's better, really. Yeah, let's do that. I like that. Cam Ward, J.J. McCarthy. Both going to be getting their first starting years. I think more gets asked of Cam Ward, but I think J.J. McCarthy's got the better offense to work with. Let's keep it like so, but that's close. Caleb Williams, I am going to jump ahead of both of them. Caleb Williams, better defense. I don't know. I can be convinced, but I'm going to move Caleb Williams up ahead of probably Drake May. Probably. Definitely has a better offensive coordinator, right? And offensive weapons. Yeah, let's keep him ahead of Drake May. Okay, Geno Smith, run heavy, good. Like the weapons, like it to improve over the season. More so here. Defense. Minnesota's got a pretty solid defense. Geno Smith is playing for Las Vegas. Probably not as good of a defense. Geno Smith, Drake May. Defenses may be on par. I think Geno Smith with the better weaponry to start the season and maybe to end it as well if things go correctly. Matt Stafford, run first, offense, a great passer though. and really good weapons, and I think that the touchdowns will increase. Part of the reason he was so bad in fantasy was that they ended up running a lot of touchdowns, and I don't know how much less that happens this year. I would say he and Geno Smith are probably in a similar tier here. I'm feeling like maybe Jordan Love, Caleb Williams need to be moved behind that group there, but I think we're still in the same tier here. Up until at least Tua. Then I don't know. I don't know yet. CJ Stroud, we are going to move up. I'm excited about the potential there. I think more so than for Drake May. I think he's going to be in this grouping. Defense between the three of them. So very much on par as well. That's tough. This is definitely like a tier. I think right there. I think actually I might move Drake May. As much as I don't want to, might be a different tier. Russell Wilson, New York Giants. I kind of like the situation. It's Russell Wilson, and eventually he'll probably get replaced. Possibly, I don't know about probably. He'll possibly get replaced. They're definitely going to want to establish the run a little bit more than last year. And it's a thin offense in terms of once you get into the red zone, teams are going to know who to cover, right? And then Sam Darnold playing for Seattle, I expect them to take a step down from last year offensively. But I still would prefer him for sure over J.J. McCarthy. Clint Kubiak's going to want to be aggressive. I mean, he ran a pretty fantasy-friendly offense last year. That's going to be close as well. And then Russell Wilson over Cam Ward. I think yes. I'd say his number one wide. Yeah, definitely yes. Cam Ward, I'm going to move back, like actually behind Aaron Rodgers. And probably behind Dak Prescott. And Michael Penix was promising last year. And then I'm going to move Bryce Young and Cam Ward actually down here. It's nothing against Cam Ward. Man, there's that possibility. There's that possibility for Cam Ward. And for Bryce Young, I guess, to have a slight breakout. So we'll keep them there. I think I need one more tier. All right, so yeah, that's going to be my cutoff. There is going to be C.J. Stroud, from Jared Goff to C.J. Stroud. Now, that feels like that could go in with the Bo Nix and Justin Fields group, though, right? Why don't we do that? Would we really be shocked if C.J. Stroud's better than Bo Nix? Probably not. So then we'll just clear this row. And then for this tier, we just need to see Aaron Rodgers over Russell Wilson. Yes or no? Pittsburgh, DK Metcalf, better defense. I think less is asked of him than Russell Wilson. I think I'm going to keep him like that. Dak Prescott, we have the injury concern. Yeah, I think we'll just keep it like this. And maybe I'm a little high on Drake May, but I'm optimistic about that. He does also bring a little bit of rushing upside. He could definitely have several rushing touchdowns, maybe like a younger version of Dak Prescott in that sense once you get near the goal line. I'm not sure how much he may or may not have done that last year, to be perfectly honest off the top of my head. So there we go. I think that is what we're going to call it. These are my current rankings. Lamar Jackson is going to be my quarterback one coming into the offseason here, followed by Josh Allen, Jayden Daniels, Joe Burrow, and Jalen Hurts to wrap up my top 5 quarterbacks. My top 11 are going to be Patrick Mahomes after that, followed by Baker Mayfield, Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, Kyler Murray, and Justin Herbert are my top 10 prospects, essentially. And then we're going to get into this middle group of quarterbacks that I can be convinced are going to do better than this, definitely have opportunities to be better than the previous tier or two, but for one reason or another, I'm not 100% on them. So that's Bo Nix, Justin Fields, Jared Goff, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, Matt Stafford, Geno Smith, and CJ Stroud. Definite shuffling amongst that tier possible. Next tier, not too far behind that: Drake May, Tua, Sam Darnold, J.J. McCarthy, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, Michael Penix Jr. And now we get into the area of quarterbacks that I'm probably not going to be taking, right? I'd rather not. That starts with Cam Ward and Bryce Young. Bryce Young's just still concerned about Cam Ward, doesn't have the best options, but I do see an upside for both of them. So that's why I have them be ahead of the Tyler Shucks, Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco, Daniel Jones. Question marks all around there and concerns. Did we need to revamp this group? Tyler Shucks should not be. I think it goes something like this, because I also think Joe Flacco will be passing less than he has in the past in Cleveland. I think they're going to want to reestablish their run game pretty heavily. So ultimately, honestly, I would probably say, even if Daniel Jones ends up being the starter, I'll take him over Joe Flacco. So we'll leave it like this, actually, then. Because more weapons offensively for Daniel Jones, and more experience than Tyler Shuck there. And then Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel, Kirk Cousins are all non-starters at this point, so you're just taking a gamble on you think for some reason or another that these guys will be the starter in your deeper leagues ultimately, or because you just really like them and you're a fan of them or something like that, and you like to do that for fantasy football. That's just how you roll. No problem with that. So that's it. These are the quarterbacks to start the offseason. I don't know when my next video will come out. I'm not 100% sure yet if I want to do the same thing or if I want to actually, before going and doing these types of videos for the other positions, maybe I'll do tight end at least. I think for wide receivers and running backs, I might want to do a preview of by like division, just looking at the teams, depth charts, and giving you some of my thoughts on them, and hopefully getting some of your feedback based on your fanship of maybe what's going on in the early. Do I have anything wrong in terms of what I'm anticipating in camp battles, who I think is going to win, etc., etc. Get some updates from you guys on what's going on with your teams would be kind of, I think, fun. Maybe do those live too. Not sure yet. Thank you very much for tuning on in. Take care. Bye-bye.